I want to know who in the Big Ten thought it was a good idea to okay the schedule for Wisconsin. This is the most ridiculous Big Ten schedule I have ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's crunch time in Wisconsin, and they got a brutal, brutal deal with this schedule. Luke Fickell needs to win games heading into 2025, and the Big Ten did no favors. Taking a look at the schedule, you got Alabama in the non-conference, but look at this Big Ten schedule. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota. These are all teams we're really high on. I skipped over Iowa. They're still a pretty solid team. Seven of the games are at home. I really don't think that's going to help out Wisconsin that much. This is an 8.5 on the difficulty meter.
Starting it off against Miami, Ohio, who finished second in the MAC. Are they going to be as good as they were last year? I don't really know, but Wisconsin needs to make some steps forward, and I definitely think there's potentials for them to stumble, especially with like, bringing in yet another new quarterback from the transfer portal. And I think even with it being at home, there's a little bit of upset potential. I'm gonna favor them still, but Miami, Ohio is no joke. That's not an easy non-conference game, but still an 85% chance for the Badgers here. Middle Tennessee, on the other hand, that's the easiest game on their schedule, and they're going to be happy to have that one at Camp Randall. 100% chance for Middle Tennessee to lose that game and the Badgers to get at least one win. Then the beginning of the end starts, and that is a road trip to Bryant-Denny Stadium to face the Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama did not have a successful season by Alabama standards, or if you want to even get more specific, by Nick Saban Alabama standards, after missing the college football playoffs, losing their bowl game to Michigan, who was 6-5, 7-5 going into it. This Alabama team is going to be out for blood. There's an open quarterback battle going on currently that should start to resolve itself in the next week or two with spring games going on. But this Alabama team is going to be welcoming a Wisconsin team that they beat pretty handily last season with Jalen Milroe at Camp Randall. They still have a guy named Ryan Williams, who is probably the second best wide receiver in all of college football behind another sophomore named Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. And this Alabama team, I think in year two under Kalen DeBoer, is going to return to form by Alabama standards. I think Wisconsin is going to get blown out in this one. 10% chance for the Badgers here. Then they come back to Camp Randall and they will play the Maryland Terrapins. Maryland, not the greatest team and a little bit of a rebuild right now. A little bit of a revenge game for Wisconsin this one, just because the starting quarterback they're bringing in out of the transfer portal in Billy Edwards is a transfer from Maryland. He was their starting quarterback last season and is expected to be the starter. But overall, this Maryland team, I just don't think is going to be able to handle whatever talent Wisconsin has. So a 75% chance for Wisconsin to get the win here going into their first bye week.
Yeah, after that, a road trip to the Big House to face Michigan. Big story with Michigan, obviously, right now is Bryce Underwood is coming in and maybe will be the starter by this point. We really still don't know what the starting quarterback position is going to look like for Michigan, but he was one of the highest rated quarterbacks in this 2025 class, and the fans there are very excited about him. Now, the other unknown with Michigan is if there's going to be any punishment with the sign stealing scandal. All of that maybe will come out at some point during the summer. Really still don't know there. That's definitely something that could affect their season, especially as it gets closer to the start of the season. Only a 25% chance for Wisconsin to win that one, though, as of right now on the road. Next up, Iowa at home. This one we are going to favor the Hawkeyes. They always have a really solid defense. And offensively, I mean, Wisconsin's still going to be a little bit better, but these Wisconsin Iowa games, they normally end up 10-7 or so, something along those lines. This is going to be very, very low scoring. And I think there's a pretty solid chance that Iowa does get the win, even though it's in a Camp Randall. About a 40% chance for Wisconsin here, but this is definitely one of the Big Ten games that they maybe have a chance of pulling off an upset in. Then a ridiculous 2 game stretch. First up, Ohio State at home. This one, 20% feels pretty generous for Wisconsin, but we are going to go ahead and say a 20% chance that they beat Ohio State. Camp Randall's a tough environment, but the Buckeyes are going to be a very, very good team in 2025. They are the defending national champions, and realistically, there is a very, very low chance that Wisconsin actually pulls off this upset. Just like the next week, going on the road to face Oregon, also going to be a top 10 team in 2025. This is a really, really good Oregon team once again. Quarterback is a little bit more unknown with Oregon. Dante Moore, obviously the favorite to land the job, but we know a lot less about him than we do with Ohio State. That being said, still, this Oregon environment is incredibly difficult to play in. I think Wisconsin's going to struggle a lot in this one. I like the Ducks by a lot at home, only a 15% chance for a Wisconsin win. After that second bye week, facing Washington, this time it's at home. They do get to avoid that Washington environment on the road, which is almost as tough as Oregon's. I think this is going to be a really good game, but I do really like Washington for 2025. I like them more than Wisconsin. This is another really difficult game. Even though they're on the road, I like the Huskies here. Only a 35% chance for a Wisconsin win. And then another road trip, this time facing Indiana. The Hoosiers made the college football playoffs, shocking a lot of people last season. I think they're going to be pretty solid again this year. Overall, they're bringing in Fernando Mendoza from Cal. He's maybe probably not going to be as good as Curtis Rourke was, but still, Indiana's going to have a solid team. The schedule's not terribly difficult. They won't make another playoff run, but they're still going to be a pretty solid team. With the home field advantage, Wisconsin only has a 25% chance to win this one.
After that, they will come back home to Camp Randall to face the Fighting Illini, a team in the Big Ten and just in college football in general that a lot of people are very high on. A lot of hype surrounding this Illinois team after a very successful season last year and only looking like they're going to get better considering Luke Altmaier is back at quarterback and they have a very favorable schedule to get to 10 wins pretty easily. The only real low lights on their schedule are games against Ohio State and against Oregon. But this Illinois team is looking like it's going to be pretty solid. And I think even though it is a home game for the Badgers, Illinois is still going to be the favorite in this one. But compared to a team like Washington or Ohio State, that's a little bit more proven or has a little bit more experience playing against some of these tougher opponents. I think Illinois is just going to be slightly behind them, but still a very solid team in this environment. So 40% chance for the Badgers here. Could be a very interesting game. And if there's going to be one possible upset, I could easily see this one being it. Finally, they have their border war rivalry game against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Minnesota is one of the teams we are expecting to really put up a fight in the Big Ten. Granted, the top four teams of Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, and Michigan are pretty solid, but Minnesota, I think, is going to firmly establish themselves in that second tier with teams like Illinois, Indiana, Washington, even like a team like Nebraska. But PJ Fleck has been one of the best coaches in the Big Ten for as long as he's been at Minnesota. I think he's poised to have yet another very successful year. I think the quarterback room is in an open battle right now. I think they have a freshman that they are bringing in that has a lot of upside, but they also are bringing in a transfer from Georgia Tech who has experience playing against those Power Four opponents. So that'll be interesting to watch out for. But one thing that is usually a safe bet is that Minnesota turns out a very solid running back that they like to use over and over again. Last season, it was Darius Taylor in his sophomore year. If he is able to take it up a level and get to 1,000 yards rushing, he was 14 yards short of it last year. If he's able to get to that 1,000 yard mark, I think this Minnesota team is going to be very scary for Big Ten teams to play against. In this case, against Wisconsin, I think it's going to be a tough rivalry game. But since it is that rivalry game, it's going to even it out a little bit, even though it is a road game for the Badgers. So a 40% chance for Wisconsin to get the win in this rivalry game. But this will be a very electric game to watch at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this is just a brutal schedule for Wisconsin. After those first four games, they're not favored to win the entire rest of the season. So they're only favored in three out of these 12 games. Now, I don't necessarily think that they'll go 3-9. I think they can do a little bit better than that. But I mean, it's going to take beating some good teams. Iowa would be a tough win to pull off. You know, I think beating either Illinois or Minnesota would be really tough. I think optimistically, I'm going to say that we can see a 5-7 Wisconsin team. I think a bowl game, unfortunately, is probably out of the question. There's a good chance, honestly, we could see them going even like 4-8, or I really don't think 3-9. I think they can pull off one of these games, but 4-8's a very real possibility. However, we are going to say for right now, 5-7 for Wisconsin.
Yeah, this Wisconsin season hinges on two things. One is staying healthy, which they have failed to do, I think, season after season, it seems like, especially with their transfers. And then, second, speaking of transfers, is Billy Edwards in their transfer quarterback who is looking like he will be the starter. He's got to play out of his mind to take this Wisconsin team back to its former glory. They're going to need some people to step up offensively as well. I think they're losing their starting running back after his senior season last year, but they do have a freshman who was RB2 last year. It's really just going to come down to these young guys, and if this Wisconsin team can win in a couple games that we don't have them favored in, like that Iowa game, like either Indiana or Illinois, Minnesota especially as well in that rivalry game. But other than that, this is a tough schedule and a really tough time for Wisconsin. Like you said at the beginning of the video, Luke Fickell is fighting for his job. So he either is going to save his job with the most miracle season ever for this Badgers team, or it's going to be the perfect out for Wisconsin to fire him because of this difficult schedule.
Yeah, last year the Badgers went 5-7, missing a bowl game. This year, it looks like it's going to be another 5-7 season. The projection right there as well, 5.1 wins for 2025, based on all those percentages from the last screen. And the Vegas over/under also has them at plus odds to make a bowl game. So, unfortunately for Wisconsin fans, it's looking like it's going to be a pretty rough year. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. This is a brutal schedule for Wisconsin. One of the worst that we've seen. So, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.